So I want to know the whole story, man. Like, what got you into it? Like, where does your interest start?
Um, well, I was a pretty skinny kid, like really, really skinny. I was doing what was the sport? Track and field. So I was like a big like distance runner, 5Ks, 10Ks kind of stuff though. So I got like really like underweight. And like slowly I like watched the Rocky movies. I remember like see him lifting and everything. I thought like, wow, like I realized like, hey, it is better to have some muscle on you when it comes to fighting rather than just be like the skinny guy because like the heavier you are, the better your punches and stuff. I thought like, yeah, you know something, I really think that I want to get into like lifting. So I slowly start lifting. I look up to Mike Tyson, Roy Jones, and all of those like jacked
And how old were you at
boxers.
this point?
Probably was like 13 years old.
Okay.
I think that I was like 5'10" and like shit, man, probably like 117, 120. I was a really underweight kid. I remember that at some point, because of all the running that we were doing some event at the school, and I pass out. Like in the middle of the sun, I just pass out. And I was like they told me like, yeah, you are undernutrition. Like you need
Oh
to eat more.
shit.
You need to eat more because like you are running all these miles, and you don't eat properly. I was like, damn. So I start like eating and everything. I realized like, okay, I want to get huge, and then eventually get into fighting. Like that was like how I see it. So I started lifting. We moved to San Luis Potosí. I was in Aguascalientes. We moved to San Luis Potosí, and turns out that my math teacher had been a bodybuilder. And he had been like Mr. Mexico, like their place in Mr. Mexico. I was like, oh damn, like lucky me though. I can ask him all these questions and stuff. So I start asking him like, hey, like, what do you think? I'm doing bench press for this. I'm like eating this. I'm eating that, and he will like start guiding me. And he actually told me like, hey, there is gonna be a bodybuilding show like in a month, something like that. If you wanna come watch it, and I was like, oh, yeah, sure, why not though? So I went and I watched it, and suddenly they had a category that was from people who were under 18 years old. And I see these guys, I'm like, oh damn, I look better than those guys though. I'm like, huh? Like, I could probably do this though. So I told him like, hey, I saw the like category of like under 18. And I was like, they look like shit. He was like, yeah, don't they? I was like, do you think I could do it? And he's like, why don't you give it a try though? So like I prepped for like a show in May, something like that. I took second place. If I had taken first, I would have gone to the Mr. Mexico. The guy who took first, nah, he was like a fucking like beast though. And like my coach told me like he's on roids, don't worry. I was like, oh wow, like shit, a 17-year-old on roids already? Like that's impressive though. So I kept competing, but I also like I didn't want to be just a bodybuilder because I realized how limited you are. Like I see a lot of people who have like a lot of muscle, but they don't have any stamina. They can't lift heavy. Like it's just for looks. I was like, no, no, no. I don't want this for the looks. I want to be as athletic as fuck. I want to be a fucking superhero. So I kept combining like boxing with other sports. I competed in Golden Globes in New Mexico. I won it twice.
And that's when we were at NIMI, right?
Yeah, in 2015 and 2017, I won in Golden Globes in the 175 category. I did triathlons. I just did a 10K like 2 months ago. Took second place like in the overall. So I always been
Well, bro, fucking yesterday morning you ran what 10 miles?
more than that, man. It was like 12 miles, something like that. It was half a marathon. It was the 20K. So yeah, I try to be like as athletic as I can because I didn't like the idea of having like a nice body and not being able to do anything with it. Like I was like, that's stupid. Like you look great, but you can't do anything with it. Like why though? You're technically just like this model. Like you don't do shit with it. But for example, if I see like a Mike Tyson, a Roy Jones, Francis Ngannou, Kamaru Usman, who are jacked to the bones, but they are also able to perform, I was like, I want to be that guy. I want to be like those guys. So that's one of the reasons why I like kept bodybuilding because I just keep building muscle and like losing fat, building muscle, losing fat. I realized that once that you get to like 6% body fat and then you start bulking again, it allows you to reach like a higher level that if you were to be like, oh, I'm gonna bulk to 13% body fat and cut to 10, 13 body percent, 10. If you go to the streams, I feel like it gives you a better muscle maturity and like it allowed me to do other things because, for example, in my senior year in high school, I went down to 175 to compete in Golden Globes. I won Golden Globes. I won by TKO, and then I dropped to 165 for my bodybuilding show. So like, oh, this works great though. I gotta lose weight for boxing anyway because the weight classes for boxing is like 200 pounds, 175, 165,
Yeah.
158. I'm like, ah, shit. Like the guys between 200 and 175 are really screwed. Like I can't fight at 200. I'm not naturally that heavy, and I feel pretty heavy. Like if I were to do it as a boxer, so I always have to drop to 175 or 168 depending on how I'm feeling with my cut. So like, at that point I already look like pretty lean. I'm gonna say like 9% body fat. So like, hey, why don't just to keep dropping and then like do it? For example, one of the plans that I have right now is that I want to run a marathon in January. No, in June. In June, I want to run a marathon. So I'm like, oh, I would want to do that at 175, something like that, and then do a bodybuilding show at like 165. I'm like, just drop into more pounds. So yeah.
So, okay, so there's a lot to unpack there. Okay, so
Yes.
so
I went on my little rant.
no, that's awesome. That's exactly what I want. So you feel that like the greater deficit that you create, whereas like you said, if you're going from like 13% body fat to 10, when you start bulking back up from that 10, you're not gonna be able. You're not having a whole lot of margin to grow and have that muscle mature, like you said. But if you drop from like a 15% body fat to like a 9% or an 8%, because you've cut down so much weight, your body, it seems like your body's just so eager.
It has to overcompensate.
Right, exactly.
Because you've been so depleted that your body's like, please give me food. I'll do anything for food. Like, that's what, like, your body, like, you're destroying it pretty much. Your body's fighting back. Your body doesn't like it to be under 10% body fat. And because you've been doing it for so long, like, bro, I remember, like, I'll be like cutting and then I'll have like a couple of carbs, and the energy that I get out of it is just amazing. Like something that I never had before in my life. Like I can go for a 3-hour run after having a couple of donuts. I'm like, that's weird. When I'm bulking and I do that, I don't feel any different. But it's because your body has to overcompensate for that. So your body's like, oh, now we have like energy. Let's put it on glycogen. Let's put it into muscles and all that kind of stuff. And I think like, because a lot of people have always tell me like, oh, bro, it's like really weird. You have like a lot of muscle maturity, and like for being a natural, you're a pretty big guy. I'm like, well, I think that it has to do with the fact that I've been competing for the last 9 years in bodybuilding. Like every year I try to have a really extreme cut. Does it have repercussions? Do I get cold pretty easy? Do I get moody and eating disorders? Yes. Are the gains worth it? Absolutely. So yeah, that's how I go about it.
So